The young woman stood in the center of the marble lobby, her heart pounding so loudly it felt like the entire building could hear it. Just moments earlier, she had walked through the golden doors of the Grand Hotel with nothing but a small bag and tired eyes, hoping for a quiet room after a long journey. Instead, she now found herself surrounded by cold stares, whispering employees, and a security guard gripping her arm as if she were some kind of criminal. The manager's sharp finger pointed toward the exit, her expression full of irritation and superiority, while the elegant chandeliers above them continued to glow as if nothing unusual was happening. What no one in that room realized was that the quiet, simple woman they were humiliating in front of everyone was not a stranger, not a trespasser, and certainly not someone who didn't belong there. She was the owner of the hotel. And within minutes, the entire building would learn a lesson they would never forget. Before we continue, take a moment to support stories that remind us of kindness and second chances. If you believe that people should never be judged by their appearance, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, leave a comment about where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you powerful stories like this one. Her name was Elena Carter, though almost no one in that building knew it. She wore faded blue jeans, a light cardigan, and simple sneakers. Her dark hair was slightly messy from traveling, and there was a softness in her eyes that made her look more like a schoolteacher than someone connected to luxury hotels and billion-dollar companies. For years, Elena had insisted on living quietly despite the wealth surrounding her life. Her husband, Daniel Carter, was known across the business world as a billionaire entrepreneur whose investments stretched across industries. Luxury hotels were only one part of his empire, yet Elena had never liked attention or status. She preferred simple things, small cafes, long walks, volunteering, and occasionally traveling alone just to see how ordinary people experience the world. The hotel she was standing in now was actually one of Daniel's newest acquisitions, though Elena had been deeply involved in the design and atmosphere. She believed hotels should feel warm, welcoming, and human, not just expensive. She had even suggested many of the details inside the building, from the marble patterns on the floor to the soft lighting, meant to make travelers feel calm after long journeys. But because Elena avoided publicity and rarely appeared in corporate meetings, most employees had no idea who she was. Thus, that afternoon she had decided to visit the hotel quietly, without warning anyone. She wanted to see how the staff treated guests when they thought no executives were watching. She had taken a long flight, followed by a train ride, and by the time she arrived at the grand entrance, she looked more like a tired traveler than someone connected to the building's ownership. The moment she approached the front desk, the atmosphere had already felt wrong. The receptionist barely looked at her and seemed annoyed when Elena politely asked if a room was available. The young employee glanced at her clothes, then at the expensive marble lobby behind her, and her expression changed instantly. The polite tone disappeared, replaced with a dismissive attitude that made Elena feel strangely invisible. Within seconds, the receptionist told her the hotel was fully booked. Elena knew that wasn't true. She had personally reviewed occupancy reports that morning. Oh no. When she calmly asked again, the receptionist called the floor manager. That was when everything escalated. The manager, a sharply dressed woman named Patricia Langford, walked over with the confident authority of someone used to being obeyed. She looked Elena up and down, her gaze lingering on the worn travel bag and simple clothes. Without even checking the reservation system properly, Patricia concluded that Elena was likely someone trying to wander into the hotel lobby without actually staying there. Within minutes, Patricia accused Elena of causing a disturbance. Security was called. The large guard stepped forward and grabbed Elena's arm firmly, insisting she leave the premises immediately. Guests nearby began whispering and watching the scene unfold. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one stepped in. The polished floors and golden decor of the lobby suddenly felt cold and unfriendly. Elena's chest tightened with disbelief. This was the hotel she had helped design to make travelers feel safe and welcome. Yet here she was, being treated like a problem that needed to be removed. She tried explaining calmly that there must be a misunderstanding, but Patricia dismissed her words entirely. The manager's voice grew louder, her finger pointing toward the door as she demanded that security escort the woman out before she embarrassed the hotel any further. The moment felt surreal. Elena wasn't angry yet. She was mostly hurt. Not because she was being denied a room, but because the staff showed so little kindness to someone they believed had no status or money. As security began guiding her toward the exit, Elena slowly reached into her bag. She pulled out her phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through her contacts. Then she called her husband. Daniel Carter was in the middle of an important meeting across the city when his phone buzzed. Normally he ignored calls during meetings, but when he saw Elena's name, he excused himself immediately. Yeah. Something in her voice when he answered made his heart drop. Elena calmly explained what had happened. She didn't sound angry. She sounded sad. That worried Daniel more than anything else. Within seconds, he asked where she was. She told him she was standing outside the hotel entrance now. Daniel ended the call, walked back into his meeting room, and calmly informed his executives that the meeting was over. Then he left. 15 minutes later, a line of black cars pulled up outside the hotel. The staff inside the lobby barely noticed at first. But when the doors opened and several sharply dressed executives stepped out, followed by Daniel Carter himself, the entire atmosphere shifted instantly. Employees began whispering nervously. Patricia, the manager who had ordered Elena removed, suddenly looked confused and uneasy. Daniel walked through the lobby with quiet intensity. His presence alone seemed to silence the room, and then everyone saw who he walked toward. Elena was standing near the entrance, still holding her small travel bag. Daniel reached her first. He gently wrapped his arms around her, his expression filled with concern and protectiveness. The lobby froze. Employees stared in shock as they realized the woman they had just thrown out was standing in the arms of the hotel's billionaire owner. Daniel then turned toward the staff. The disappointment in his face was far more powerful than anger. Within minutes, senior executives from the company who had arrived with him began reviewing security footage, speaking with employees, and listening carefully to Elena's description of what had happened. Guests in the lobby watched silently as the situation unfolded. Patricia tried to explain herself, claiming she had only been protecting the hotel's reputation. But every sentence only revealed more arrogance and prejudice. Daniel's voice remained calm when he finally spoke to the staff. But his words carried weight that echoed through the entire lobby. He explained that a hotel's true reputation was not built on marble floors or luxury chandeliers. It was built on how people were treated, especially those who looked ordinary. Within the next hour, several decisions were made. Patricia Langford was dismissed from her position immediately. The receptionist who had mocked Elena was also removed. But Daniel didn't stop there. He announced mandatory retraining for the entire hotel staff, focused on empathy, hospitality, and respect. Because wealth should never determine how someone is treated. As the evening settled over the city, the hotel lobby slowly returned to normal. But the employees who remained carried a new awareness in their hearts. They had witnessed something unforgettable. A quiet woman in simple clothes had changed the culture of the entire building, and she had done it not with anger or revenge, but with dignity. Before we reach the ending, here's a special request from me to you. In the comments, write the word kindnessa if you believe people should always treat strangers with respect, no matter how they look. Later that night, Elena finally checked into a room in the same hotel where she had been humiliated earlier, but the atmosphere felt different now. Staff members greeted her with sincere warmth, and there was a humility in their eyes that hadn't been there before. As she looked out the window at the glowing city lights, Elena felt a quiet sense of hope. Maybe what had happened that day was painful, but it had also reminded everyone of something important. True character isn't revealed when powerful people are watching. It's revealed when you believe no one important is around. And sometimes the person standing quietly in front of you might be the one who teaches the greatest lesson. If this story touched your heart or reminded you how powerful kindness can be, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in treating people with dignity, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Because in a world that often judges too quickly, a little compassion can change everything. The night after the shocking events in the lobby, the hotel was unusually quiet. The marble floors still reflected the soft glow of the chandeliers, the same way they had earlier that day when humiliation unfolded in front of dozens of guests. Yet the atmosphere was different now. Something had shifted inside the building. It wasn't just the firing of a manager or the arrival of a billionaire owner that changed things. It was the uncomfortable realization that every employee had witnessed a painful truth about themselves and the culture they had allowed to exist. Upstairs, in one of the elegant suites overlooking the glowing city skyline, Elena Carter stood near the tall glass window. The lights of the streets below looked like tiny stars scattered across the darkness. In her hands was a warm cup of tea that had long gone cold, but she barely noticed. Her mind was still replaying the moment she had been grabbed by security, the moment the manager had pointed toward the door as if Elena were an inconvenience that needed to disappear. The strange thing was that Elena didn't feel anger anymore. The initial hurt had faded into something deeper, reflection. She understood that the staff had judged her by her clothes and appearance, but what saddened her most was how easily people forgot kindness when they believed someone was beneath them. Daniel stepped quietly into the room behind her. He had been speaking with company executives for hours, ensuring that the events of the day were handled properly. His normally confident posture carried a hint of exhaustion, but the moment he saw Elena standing by the window, his expression softened. He walked beside her and looked out over the city lights. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Elena gently placed her cup on the table and leaned her head against his shoulder. It was a simple moment, but it carried the weight of everything that had happened. Daniel finally broke the silence. He told her that the entire corporate leadership team had already begun reviewing policies across all their hotels worldwide. What happened that afternoon would not simply be forgotten as an isolated incident. It would become a turning point. Elena listened quietly. But then she surprised him. She told Daniel she didn't want the story to end with people losing their jobs. Daniel looked at her, slightly confused. Elena explained that yes, the manager's behavior had been unacceptable and accountability was necessary. But she also believed that real change happened when people were given the chance to learn from their mistakes. What she wanted most was not punishment. She wanted transformation. The next morning, the hotel staff gathered in the main conference hall. The atmosphere was tense. Word had spread quickly among employees that the owner himself would be addressing them. Many were nervous. Some feared more firings. Others simply felt ashamed. Daniel Carter entered the room first, followed by several senior executives. But what surprised the employees most was the woman walking calmly beside him, the same woman they had seen escorted out of the lobby the day before, Elena Carter. No longer looking like a tired traveler, she still wore simple clothing. But there was a quiet strength in her presence now that commanded respect without demanding it. The room fell completely silent. Daniel spoke briefly, explaining that the purpose of the meeting was not to humiliate anyone but to reset the culture of the company. He spoke about hospitality not as a business strategy but as a human value. Then he stepped aside. Elena moved to the front. For a moment, she looked around the room, making eye contact with many of the employees who had witnessed what happened. Some of them couldn't even look back. And then Elena began speaking. She talked about her childhood growing up in a modest neighborhood where her parents taught her that dignity wasn't measured by wealth or status. She shared how her mother used to say that the way you treat strangers says more about you than the way you treat powerful people. She explained that when she helped design the hotel, her vision had never been about luxury alone. It had been about warmth, about creating a place where travelers from anywhere in the world could walk in and feel safe. Her voice remained calm, but every word carried sincerity. She told the staff that when she walked into the lobby the day before, she had hoped to see that vision alive. Instead, she had seen fear, judgment, and arrogance. A few employees quietly wiped tears from their eyes, but Elena did not raise her voice or accuse anyone directly. Instead, she shared how deeply powerful kindness could be. She described how a single smile from a hotel employee could change the mood of a tired traveler who had spent hours on the road. She talked about families arriving after long flights, elderly guests feeling vulnerable in unfamiliar places. and people going through difficult moments who simply needed a little understanding. A hotel, she said, wasn't just a building with rooms. It was a place where human stories passed through every single day, and every employee had the power to make those stories better. By the time Elena finished speaking, the room felt completely different. The tension had dissolved into something quieter and more reflective. Daniel stepped forward again and announced that the hotel would launch a new internal program called the First Welcome. Every employee, from receptionists to managers to security staff, would be trained not just in procedures, but in empathy and emotional awareness. Employees would learn how to greet guests warmly, how to handle difficult situations with patience, and how to recognize that every person walking through the door carried their own unseen struggles. The program would begin in this hotel first, then expand across the entire company. And Elena herself would help guide it. Weeks passed. The transformation inside the hotel slowly became visible. Receptionists greeted guests with genuine smiles instead of rehearsed politeness. Security guards helped travelers with luggage rather than watching them suspiciously. Managers spent more time on the lobby floor interacting with guests instead of hiding in offices. Something simple but powerful had changed. Guests noticed it too. Online reviews began mentioning the warmth of the staff, the kindness of the service, and the welcoming atmosphere that made the hotel feel different from other luxury properties. One afternoon, a middle-aged traveler walked into the hotel wearing dusty clothes after a long road trip. Instead of judgmental glances, the receptionist greeted him warmly and immediately offered assistance. Elena happened to be walking through the lobby at that moment. She paused and watched quietly. The traveler smiled with relief as the staff member helped him check in without hesitation. Elena felt a gentle warmth spread through her chest. This was the hotel she had imagined, not perfect, but human. Months later, the story of the woman denied a room at her own hotel quietly spread across business circles and hospitality conferences. Many people expected the story to focus on the billionaire husband firing employees. But those who truly knew the story understood something deeper. The real power of the story wasn't about revenge. It was about how one painful moment became an opportunity to rebuild an entire culture around compassion. And Elena Carter remained exactly who she had always been. A simple woman who believed that kindness mattered more than status. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this story made you think about how we treat people in everyday life, please write the word "respect" in the comments. Your message might remind someone else to choose kindness today. Late one evening, long after most guests had gone to their rooms, Elena once again stood in the hotel lobby. This time, the atmosphere felt warm. A receptionist laughed with a guest while helping them print travel documents. A bellboy helped an elderly couple with their luggage. Soft music played quietly in the background. Daniel joined Elena near the entrance. They watched the scene together. He asked her softly if she was happy with how things had changed. Elena smiled, not a proud smile, not a victorious one, just a peaceful smile, because the real victory wasn't that someone powerful had stepped in. The real victory was that people had learned. And if this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, leave a comment telling us your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this. Because sometimes the greatest lessons in life begin with the smallest acts of compassion.